welcome to another wrestling documentary series with the A&E documentaries, which have brought us such greats as Andre the Giant and Macho Man Randy Savage. Has now brought us a person who's probably more controversial than all of those all put together, which is the Ultimate Warrior. Because for most of the early 2000s anyway, the Ultimate Warrior was a speaker. So again, the two young gentlemen to my right can talk about that. And with that, I'll introduce him with my good friend, buddy and pal, cousin Cheeto. How are you doing today, my good friend?
Always glad to join you for a retrospective of a wrestler.
And also today, another person who is slightly younger, so I don't know if he'll remember the late 80s, early 90s, was Jericho. He's joined us to talk about the Ultimate Warrior as well.
Yeah, I obviously didn't live the Ultimate Warrior experience, but have seen the history, seen matches, seen documentaries, and obviously watched this biography that just got released yesterday. So yeah, we get to talk about.
So, of so I grew up as an Ultimate Warrior fan the earlier years. So, how about you two? Did you grow up as Ultimate Warrior fans, or was it something that you came later into uh,
Um, oh,
understanding who he is?
I came in more later in the Ultimate Warrior. He was definitely a force to be reckoned with in late WWF, and then I did see him in WCW mostly when he came and was rivaling with Hogan again. But at that point, he didn't make much of an impact. So but I always did remember seeing, Warriors in a lot of the promo material for WrestleMania going through the years. I mean, you see him like him holding up the he was I think he was one of the first intercontinental and like concurrent world heavyweight champions. Like he was one of the first ones to hold both those belts up at the same time cuz Hogan was never an IC champion. I don't really feel like I mean Honky Tonk Man obviously was never a world champion. So I feel like he was the first one to hold both belts at WrestleMania above his head and so I always remember that image of the Ultimate Warrior in my head and he's just a very bombastic character.
I
Jericho, how
personally,
about you?
yeah. I personally wasn't. I mean, obviously, I wasn't a fan. I didn't really know the Ultimate Warrior growing up. I got into wrestling about 2006, 2007. So obviously at this time they weren't on good terms. This is right about the time of self-destruction. So I mean, I knew about that. I didn't watch the DVD at that time, but um, they didn't. They had like WWE 24/7, but they really didn't talk about their legends. But obviously, growing up with the internet and everything, you learn about these guys, and so you kind of get like a little bit of an aura around them. You know a little bit, but you don't know like their matches. You don't know a lot. Um, One thing that I'll take away, Bobby, is that damn, I'm not gonna lie, I just lost it. But yeah, uh, that's why we're recording, right?
Sure.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I'll just stop it there, so you can just cut it when I
Okay.
finish that my one topic.
Okay, so I'll
It'll come back to me. It was a point that they were saying
so
about
he
the
was
um.
one of the first.
Stop.
Okay, well, he's the first guy that I can remember. It was here, The Undertaker, but I was more Sting back. I was more WCW fan, so that was my end of it. But the Ultimate Warrior, with his look, with his entrance, he had this like really high impact entrance where he'd just run to the ring and one of few people, everyone else would just walk to the ring. He would actually literally like run from wherever the entranceway is to the ring, and sometimes it'd be quite a long way away. And like he'd shake the ropes and and everything about his promo, about his presence was otherworldly. Like he was from parts unknown,
Mhm.
and the Ultimate Warrior promos. I don't know if you've ever experienced the promos, but they are a thing of joy. Just because, even though I know that you're gonna say they're terrible, but they're not, because they lend into his character of being a little bit kind of manic. Because I remember the one promo that I remember is the one that Christian references in. I think it's the Ultimate Self-Destruction Ultimate Warrior, where it's the one where he's telling Hulk Hogan he's going to take over his plane when he goes on to WrestleMania. And I mean, I could do some of it where he goes, "Assume the controls," and all that sort of stuff. I just love that stuff. It's bizarre and stuff, but it kind of builds into it. That he had all the power moves, and he had the Gorilla Press Slam. But also the thing that got me was that he could work with the right guy. Like the right guy usually was, well for me, was Macho Man Randy Savage, because him and Randy Savage had, for whatever reason, seemed to have really good chemistry. And Randy Savage got the best matches out of it, in my opinion.
I mean, I agree. I got that inkling. I didn't see much of Savage and Warrior, but while I was watching the documentary and watching that promo with Savage and Ultimate Warrior, I'm like, that's actually a really good tag team. Like, I didn't see a lot of them, and especially in the ring, really. But I was like, like wrestling personality wise, like that's a good tag team. Like, I could ship that.
Yeah, I didn't really personally know, even before this documentary, that Savage and Warrior tag team. But going back to what Gary was saying as the promos, I just think that was a relic of that time, because I mean, even as a kid, like getting into wrestling, you watch like the clips on YouTube, and as you said, like I mean, those promos are just bizarre. I mean, he's like throwing out random words. It's almost like he would get a dictionary and just put it on a dartboard and use that to pick words. It was, I mean, it was intriguing for sure, but yeah, it was the ultimate warrior. It's the only way to describe this.
Well, because his promos would be very bizarre. It'd be like stuff like, when the moon is up in the heavens and the sky is blue, then I will survive. And then stuff like that. It's just like real bizarre stuff like that. It's just like, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what? I had no idea. I had no idea Sting was a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
I had no idea. Like until I saw this, I'm like, is that Sting? I'm like, what?
I also didn't. I knew that Sting and the Ultimate Warrior were very good friends. I knew that. I did not know that Sting and the Ultimate Warrior knew each other before both of them got into the wrestling industry. I had no idea of that. I also thought that Sting had never been a heel before, but obviously when they talked about that in the documentary, they did. I mean, obviously, very short run. But I honestly had thought Sting had never had a heel run at all. He had a very short one in World Class. But yeah, it was really interesting to see that.
Technically, it wasn't
Well,
Sting.
Well, I mean,
well,
yeah, it wasn't Sting. It was Steve Borden, yes.
yeah,
The
but
Blade
again,
Runners.
I had heard about that particular run of Stings because again, I'm a huge Sting fan. And they talk. There've been loads of shoots about the Blade Runners and how bad they were.
Mhm.
Like literally, I think it's Jim Cornette or something. Like talked about the fact that he was somewhere where they were, and I think it was in. Is it Tennessee? Where is that where is that where Jerry Jarrett and
Yeah, that's
yeah.
like yeah, Jerry Jarrett. That's Mid Atlantic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so where Jerry Jarrett and Jerry Lawler were, apparently like whenever they would come to the ring, everybody from the locker room would empty out to watch it. It says and these guys go and it says, "Oh, watch," and they complete to stink up the joint.
Yeah.
And it's just really funny because Sting was a wrestling fan, wanted to get better in wrestling. If you've heard what everyone says, you'd always ask questions like, "How can I improve this? How can I improve that? What do I need to do? What do I need to do not to do? This sort of thing." And whereas the Ultimate Warrior, I don't think he really had that passion to be a wrestler. He wanted to make money. He wanted to get the fame and the adulation, but I don't think he necessarily wanted to develop the technique and the skill set that you need to do that. And I think that because in the documentary, when they mentioned that he really loved bodybuilding, that was his passion. That was the thing that he actually wanted to do. But unless you're like Arnold Schwarzenegger's or Lou Ferrigno's or somebody of that ilk, you're never going to make top money. So which is a real shame because I mean, given how big, how his physique, he should be like one of the top guys because he had a phenomenal physique.
Oh yeah, yeah, very good look. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, then him and Sting fall apart, and then he goes to World Class where he becomes a Dingo Warrior,
Yeah.
which has got to be one of the
It,
worst names
it,
for a wrestler in the
oh,
history of man.
a god awful name. If I could just touch on that breakup with him and Sting. Obviously, you don't really get Warrior's perspective because they didn't really have an interview clip of it, and obviously Warrior passed away since. Um, but they did interview Sting about it, and at least if the story is correct from Sting's perspective, I don't understand how. And that kind of just also elaborates on how eccentric Jim Hellwig was, because they they were what was the situation? They were holding out for more money. They refused to show up for more money, and they get a call and they say, "Hey, Bill Watts isn't going to release your last paychecks. You got to come down to Little Rock to make this event to get your paychecks." And basically, the story was Hellwood didn't want to go, but Sting wanted to go. Borden wanted to go, and Borden goes by himself and gets his money. And Hellwig calls him Ultimate Warrior's pissed. He says, "Why? How can you do this to me? How can you do all that?"
Yeah, but I do think, I mean, and again, we probably might get into this further down the line. I do think his background got into that because his dad left him at a fairly early age.
Hmm.
And I think it created some trust issues that, like, if you made a demand out about something, if he felt that he screwed you over, he was never going to trust you again. He's like, you could tell that that was the kind of way he was, how
You're.
he would act.
It's a one and done trust thing.
So yeah, so he goes to the world class. So he goes to world class and becomes the Dingo Warrior. As I said, one of the worst names I've heard for wrestling in my life.
From Queens, New York.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just, the whole thing doesn't make sense, and the crowd ate it up. It tells you the industry at the time. The crowd ate it up.
No internet, so it's not like they knew. Like.
No, but I mean, you can tell. I mean, come on. The guy is billed from Queens, New York. He's got a standard Eastern coastal accent, and he's the Dingo Warrior. Oh, something doesn't add up. Something doesn't add up.
yeah, but like I said, like you see from what they were showing, he did have a little bit of a following, enough of a following that Vince McMahon was like, I want to grab a piece of that. So, and I do think that again, like you could tell that he had charisma. Because and plus the fact he was Jackson Evans and all the ladies that were in world class seemed to like him because he was that Jack's guy. Exactly. Um, he was like Jack's. He had a look. And then when WWE got him again, like they changed him from being the Dingo Warrior to being the Ultimate Warrior. Which again, still with that makeup, still with the tassels, still with the thing, but they improved his package. In that they had the core coordination, they had him running out to the ring, they had that really high pitched guitar riffs, with him coming out, and I think that is how you introduce a new wrestler. You have him be fast paced, stuff like that. What I didn't realize is I didn't realize this later is the reason that his matches were like that is because the guy couldn't work. I mean the thing is that Sting, God bless him, couldn't work originally, but got to be a better worker in his WCW days. Whereas just Warrior, for whatever reason, maybe it's because, as I said, as I said before, he's more interested in bodybuilding than he was actually being a wrestler. He just liked what wrestling could give him. I mean, he wasn't really passionate about the business.
I I think personally, it's a thing that if wrestling isn't your first industry, you're not gonna. I shouldn't say you're not gonna take it seriously, but you're not necessarily gonna put in the same amount of effort, or maybe put in the same outside of the ring that you are as somebody that's their first industry. That's what they want to do. I mean, you see it with guys like Goldberg. You see it obviously with the Ultimate Warrior. But for how little Warrior was on the scene, full time. Obviously he had his stretches in WCW. He had his stretches, but for that, that 5-year run, I mean, like you said, he wasn't really, he wasn't a great worker. He wasn't really treating people right as far as in the ring and such. And I think it shows. I think it shows as far as his passion for the business.
But also, if you, because again, as I said, this was about the time that I started to become a fan. I said, because of in the UK, you have to pay to be a WWE fan. It was on our satellite, but WCW was on normal television, so I could watch that whereas I couldn't watch uh, WWE. But again, when I'd watch the Ultimate Warrior, as I said, usually when I'd watch him, it'd be when he was with Randy Savage, and as I said, Randy Savage got the best out of him. But the problem that he had was that the people who he worked with could only get so much out of him because again, his matches were very, I don't want to say formulaic is the word, but very like he would have to do his power moves, and then he'd do the thrust, and then he'd do the splash, and then that would be it. Again, once you see that a couple of times, you'd want to see something a bit more. Yeah, go ahead, Gio.
Gonna say is that I think by today's standard, his because now that we've had the Goldbergs and the Rybacks and I think that it was is very formulaic. But I think back in the day, that was pretty like somebody getting beaten that quick. I feel was pretty out of the norm. Like where you had matches that lasted at least 5 to 10 minutes. Warrior, like he came in and won the IC belt in like 30 seconds, and people are like, he had the belt for over a year at that point, and this guy walks in and or Honky Tonk. What did I say? I don't remember.
Well, you said he. I was just clarifying that Honky Tonk had it, and Warrior beat him. Not that.
Yeah. Honky Tonk Man had it for over a year, and Warrior just came in and just snuffed him in 30 seconds. People are like, "What just happened?" And nowadays,
match, mind you, as well. It was just it was going to be a random opponent to face a Honky Tonk Man and Ultimate Warrior out beats a guy who's held it for a year. It was a really big moment. I mean, yeah.
Nowadays, that's kind of formulaic, but I mean, back then that was just like unheard of. That a champion of that caliber, who's held the belt for that long, to be beaten that quick.
Plus, that helped Rocky him up because that put a fire under him. Because the thing is that after that, he started working with Andre the Giant. Now, as much as a legend Andre the Giant was at this time, I want to say that he wasn't quite the force he was, or wasn't quite the worker he was, because Andre the Giant, I think that age and his the schedule and his legs and I think from what I understand, his condition didn't stop at a certain age; it continued. So he continued to grow, and that put a lot of strain on his back and his legs. So at this time, he wasn't really the full Andre the Giant that we know and love. He could still do stuff, but it was costing him more and more pain. That's the reason why he started using crutch and stuff like that. In the WWE, that's why they had to write it in that he was going to use that. And I think that the Ultimate Warrior, from what I heard, from what they said in the Self-Destruction Ultimate Warrior, that Andre didn't particularly care to work with him because he was so, not really versed in working.
This wasn't Hogan Andre at WrestleMania 3, but this is a big match.
Well, because Hogan was the only one who, I believe at this point, I think is what they said in the documentary, Hogan was the only person to slam Andre at this point. And I mean, Andre said, "Slam me." And I don't think that was how it was supposed to go, but I think that's how Andre wanted it to go. Like, I think maybe that's how it was supposed to go, but I feel like if Andre's telling Warrior to slam me and Warrior's like, "Wait, what?" I feel like that's not how this match was supposed to go. So I feel like Andre was like, "No, this is your moment. You need to do this." And that's more of like Andre's experience coming in saying, "This is your moment. Like you and now Hogan are on a collision course."
So yeah, because once he beat Andre, there was only one other person to go, and that was the top guy who was Hogan. Because I mean, plus you got to remember that this was one of the few times that face versus face at WrestleMania. Because usually it's a heel versus face. Usually when it comes to stuff like that. but no, they've been built. So I mean, again, I don't want to say it's like Austin and The Rock, but it's a similar sort of thing where you have two trajectories coming at the same time. But the thing is that so again, as I said, the promos going towards it were typical Hogan of we're an ultimate, so I'm gonna be your brother and all this sort of stuff. See your parents and what you're gonna do when Hogan Mania goes on you and all this sort of stuff. And then Ultimate Warrior comes on with that one about the I'm gonna take control of your play. Kind of like different pitches to how they wanted to play that particular thing. But again, I've watched the match and you know what? It's actually a pretty decent match. The Ultimate Warrior did what he was told today when they went through the progressions and stuff like that, and it seemed that it was a pretty decent match, and people were into it. And I think that the problem we had is that Hogan had basically gone through everybody. So if he was doing that, he was basically just doing what Hogan did. He's just basically being a role at Hogan, where he could have his own monsters to slay. You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah, they touched on that in the documentary a little bit, as far as they didn't really set him up with the right person. They didn't really give him, excuse me, they didn't really give him a good run. And Bobby had mentioned earlier that this was the first time that somebody was the dual champion of the Intercontinental Champion and the World Heavyweight Champion. And it's also the first time that WWE had really tried to homegrown their own superstar. Obviously the Dingo Warrior, not the greatest name of all time, in world class, was loved, but not a name. A lot of the names in WWE had made themselves known before they had gotten to WWE in their respective territories. Hogan with the AWA, Savage, and was he in Mid South? I think he was. But anyway, he had made his name previous to coming into the WWF. This was really the first, kind of not out of nowhere, but WWE molded superstar. And yeah, and I think because of that, it's really unfortunate that he didn't get a run that you'd say that he might deserve.
Are you saying that Doink the Clown is not a homegrown hero of the WWF?
I mean, okay, a homegrown contender. How about, let's say?
But I mean, as I said, he did have a lot of energy, and I said it just dissipated. But I think the problem is that Jim Hellwig was a very complicated person.
Oh yeah.
And I think that is covered throughout this. But this is when we start to see that complication come to the fore, come to the boil, when Jim basically asked for Hulk Hogan money, because I think it was SummerSlam '91, what I say, where because I actually remember this, or was it 1991? I can't remember. I think it's '91 when they thought basically ultimately said, right, either I get paid the same as Hogan or I'm not showing up. The thing is, if you know anything about wrestling, the biggest no-no is no showing an event. If you say if you literally say, look, I can't come to because of X, he's like, all right, fair enough, but show up next time. But if you say to them, I'm coming, but if you literally say to them, look, I'm not going to come unless you pay me X, that's kind of a big no-no. So I know what we're doing that pissed a lot of people off. Sergeant Slaughter was literally like, I was so annoyed, and then Hulk Hogan says like, you push him over and I'm gonna break his legs. I'm like, holy crap.
Well, and here's the thing: I don't blame Ultimate Warrior for wanting to get Hulk Hogan money, because at that point he was. I feel like, and as I said, I didn't watch him in the day and age of that wrestling, but I felt like he was probably right. He may not have been Hogan level per se, but he was right up there. I mean, he beat Hogan 1, 2, 3 in the middle of the ring, fair and square.
Yep.
I feel like him asking for more money, maybe not more money than Hogan, maybe not even as much money as Hogan, maybe going to the table with Vince and saying, look, I'm making this. Hogan I know is making this. I'm like, can we make myself a little bit more worth your while here? And it goes back to that Ultimate Warrior, either you pay me what I'm worth or I'm walking type mentality. And that's what got him in trouble before. It's what got him in trouble now.
Yeah, I agree a lot with what Bobby said. I agree with pretty much all of it. The one takeaway, what I will from what you said though, is I think that McMahon really wasn't offended by Warrior's demands. I think he was more offended by the way Warrior went about it. Because as you said, I mean, he beat Hogan in the middle of the ring, 1, 2, 3, at your biggest event of the year. I don't know if he was selling as much merchandise as Hogan. I don't know if he was a household name as Hogan, and maybe that's how McMahon saw the situation. But the man was selling merch. The man was headlining main events. The man was working every night. I feel that raises maybe not exactly to his demands, but I mean pretty close to what he was asking for. I think that's fair. But as Gary said, it's a no-no in the business to just say I'm not going to show up unless you pay me. And it's happened before, and as we've seen, as we saw in the future with Jeff Jarrett, you will get blackballed, and it's going to be for a long time. It won't be forever, as we've seen. Both of these men are in the Hall of Fame, but I mean, you can't double cross McMahon like that. And unfortunately, because of the repercussions that Warrior got, and the way that he saw Vince McMahon, the perspective that he saw Vince McMahon as kind of as a father figure, as a minimum as a mentor, as somebody that he looked up to, and I feel that that affected him personally pretty much a lot, and that was the reason why he stayed so long from the WWF after.
Okay, so yeah, so he gets let go, but then I think it's not that long afterwards he comes back and helps Hulk Hogan out at WrestleMania. Is it 8?
I don't
WrestleMania 8?
remember.
Honestly, I don't remember, but it is at a WrestleMania.
Yeah, with Papa Shango and Sid Vicious slash Justice. I can't remember which one it is at this time.
It was Sid
Basically,
Justice, yeah.
we're beating him up and stuff like that, and he comes out and like helps him out, and then he has another run. But this run was a little bit more
Mid card.
Yeah, yeah, like because the thing is that he because he wasn't really in the gym as much as he used to. His physique had really gone out. Actually, there's an argument that he was a different guy. He wasn't.
Yeah, I 100%. And I would also say, as far as like you're saying, Gary, like the look, um, I feel like when these wrestlers, as they get older, but more specifically when they come back, either they go to a different promotion, or they get fired and they come back to a promotion. I feel like they almost find it they need to change it up. They need to change up their look. They need to change up their gimmick. And you see it a lot. I mean, you've seen it with Jericho. One that sticks out to me is Macho Man Randy Savage changing to going from WWF to WCW.
Okay, so after this, he gets let go because he failed the steroids test, and then he goes away. Now, at this point, he goes into a bit of a unusual phase in his life. And what I mean by that is he stops calling himself Jim Hellwig and starts calling himself the Ultimate Warrior. Like he literally, by default, whatever it is, changes his name from Jim Hellwig to Warrior. And this is when things start going off the tracks, like severely off the tracks for him. In the fact that he puts out a comic, the Ultimate Warrior comic, which again I've seen where he comes up with stuff like Distrusity and like and Strong and stuff like that. If you've never read them, they're a treat for the eyes and the ears. It's him just Distrusity and all that sort of stuff. But also he started to like open different things like Ultimate Warrior University, where he started to want to train new wrestlers. Which again, if I want to learn wrestling, it's not going to be off the Ultimate Warrior. You know what I mean?
No, fair enough. Yeah.
That's where Bill Goldberg went.
Oh, don't say
Ryback.
Bill Goldberg. Bill Goldberg was fine.
What was he?
Yeah. Um, but yeah, and then he gets. I think this is in the documentary where he meets his future wife. Like she comes along to work for him and his gym. And like she said he goes to her, right, I'm going to marry you, and she goes, I won't even date you. It's one of those things where like we started dating and then we got married. It's just like it's one of those things where he just knew when he met her. he just felt it, and it was one of those things where, you know, the relationship went that way. But you could tell, but again,
Yes, because looks had nothing to do with it.
she was, I don't know, from the photographs, she weren't bad
No,
looking.
that's what I mean. I mean, he probably saw her. He's like, oh, she's hot. I'm going to marry her. And fortunately for him, spoiler alert, she turned out to be actually a really good human being. She could have turned out to be some kind of like
Gorgeous George.
Gorgeous George, yeah. So
Anyway, so this is when I think just after this, he has his final run with the WWE. Now, I don't know if this is when you two come in, well, you, Cheeto, come into this, because this is when he has his final run. I think that was 90, I want to say 96 or 95, one of the two.
I started around 96 watching wrestling. So I mean, I believe I saw Ultimate Warrior because he fought Triple H at one point in a big match, and I remember seeing. Yeah, and I remember seeing that, but that was his last WrestleMania appearance, I believe.
Yeah.
I say, yeah, so I think I saw that one, but yeah, so.
Yeah, because he had a bit of a feud with Jerry Lawler, where Jerry Lawler about the comic book, because that was one of the conditions of him coming back, that they had to promote his comic book, and basically, and Jerry Lawler hit him over the head with the signed picture thing. Anyway, yeah, so this was when he was going a little bit. He was a little bit mental, and he he can't no show some shows because his dad passed away. No, even his dad had never had because from the documentary, his dad walked out on him and his brothers when they were very little. So
Yeah, he was 10.
yeah, and they kind of. But I think the thing is that Vince McMahon was going, well, he said he couldn't give us yet, but the thing is, he's still your dad. It doesn't matter how long it's been, but sometimes you want that reconciliation, and you do need to think.
You need that closure.
Yeah.
And I agree with both of you that you need closure. I will say that I sympathize with McMahon a little bit as far as with how much Warrior was doing it, because I mean that there is to a certain point, when you don't really see the guy in 10 years. I mean, I understand, I completely get that, it's your father, maybe it hits you emotionally that you didn't really have a relationship, that kind of thing. Maybe it takes some time to grasp with. But if you haven't seen the guy in 10 years, 2 weeks, to kind of no show on shows, I get that.
Yeah, no. I'm like, take a day or two. Like, but yeah, two weeks is like, especially for a guy that couldn't even send you a postcard. Like, I would show up to the funeral for some closure, and then slam the casket shut and be like,
kind
of promo on the casket.
But I would say that this is where I'm going to disagree with both of you. I disagree with that because again, because from his mum was saying he wanted that relationship with somebody, like because he wanted it with Vince McMahon, and Vince McMahon closed the door on it, and I think that's his. He wanted that relationship, and he felt like I wish that my dad had affected me, and maybe that sort of pain had come back to him, and that was what was behind it, and I think that. If he could communicated that better to Vince and say, look, I know I haven't seen him, but I need a male figure in my life, and the thing is, he's the closest. Even though I didn't see him, I need to deal with this. Is there any way that he can give you like a couple of weeks off and then I'll be back for you? And I think if he'd done that, he might be able to stay. I think, but I think that the way he handled it was very poorly.
And sorry, you want to say something, Cheeto?
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay. Just to kind of bookend it, because as you said, that was the end of his run, his last run in WWE. What I found interesting is they really didn't talk about his runs in WCW. They really didn't bring it up.
Yeah, at all. I was surprised.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're not they're not great. I mean it's nothing that you want to go back and watch, but I mean, there are important parts of his career. I mean, going back and fighting Hogan, and I mean, for how shitty it was, for lack of a better word, it deserved to be covered. And another thing that I thought was extremely interesting that they didn't cover is, I don't know if you guys know this, but in 1997, what date is this? In December 1997, McMahon sent Ultimate Warrior an offer It's a 5-year contract with a $750,000 guarantee, which pays him 35% royalties, and everybody else was paid 25%. So he's giving him $750,000 a year and 10% more royalties than everybody else on a 5-year deal in a 1998, in basically January '98. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I think McMahon saved his ass on this deal. And secondly, my question just about this after bringing it up is, could you guys even imagine the Ultimate Warrior in a 1998 WWF? I mean, that to me is just insane. That's a crazy thought.
Well, you could
I think he would have been. I think he would have been buried by the Stone Colds and the Rocks,
Oh
and
yeah.
I mean, I feel like that deal would have almost been a waste for McMahon, not for Ultimate Warrior.
That's what I mean. That's what I'm getting at. McMahon saved
But
himself from that
but
deal.
it could have been that he was like did what the British Bulldog did in his last run there, where he put over the newer talent. Like he put over The Rock, he put over Jericho, he put over Stone Cold, he put over Eddie Guerrero, he put over the new guy because again, Dave Boy Smith at that time was having not the same sort of problems, but was having problems with
Similar.
drugs.
Yeah, drug abuse. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas again, I agree with you. They should have talked about the WCW run because that was ridiculous. When he
Oh
would
yeah.
appear in
Bad.
the
Doing
in the
the
mirror.
mirror, the ghost with Bischoff and Hogan. Yeah.
Honestly, I felt like it would have been better instead of going after Hogan. I felt like if they would have done something with Sting and Warrior at that point,
Yeah.
that would have been.
That could have worked. That could have worked.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I guess you could have a feud with Hogan, but like a natural progression.
Well,
Yes,
the
I feel like the feud with Hogan was warranted. It just should have been executed a hell of a lot better. But I agree with you. I feel like they missed a point with not getting with Sting. Maybe they should have done Sting first, then Hogan.
Well, and the
apparently, I mean, again, this is a rumor I've heard. That apparently Hogan said that one of his conditions to certain some contracts or something was that they bring in the Warrior so he could get his win back.
get his what back?
Okay.
His
win.
win.
Because he wanted to win for the payback at WrestleMania.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean that makes sense for Hogan because I mean at this point in Hogan's career, like yeah, Hogan's just an utter dick. I mean I can't.
Brother.
I know when that whole backstage segment at the hall. I know I'm jumping ahead, but like that whole backstage segment with them too.
God, it was so
I was
superficial and bullshit.
well, no, I felt like the Warrior was being genuine, but then Hogan was just like, "Yeah, brother, I love you.
I believe it.
I'll step over your corpse to get up top, brother."
They should have never made that tape, brother. They should have, even though I said all those things and I talked all that shit about you, they should.
And Hogan's like, "Yeah, they really should. Yeah, they really shouldn't have." As he's counting his money from it.
So after the WCW run, I think he's more or less done with wrestling. There's maybe some events he does sporadically, but now he does college tours. Now this is maybe where Jericho comes in, and he starts to parrot. I don't even want to say conservative, but very right wing, racist.
No, these aren't. No. Let's please draw a line because especially in this day and age, you have. I mean, I'm not a conservative myself, but you have a lot of conflating with conservative ideas and these just. I mean, heinous ideas is what we can label them as. I mean, these things like I mean, just hate based on people's sexual orientation or hate based on their religion or stuff like that. It's abhorrent for one, but two, it really damages the legacy of somebody like that. I mean, obviously it's not the same case as Benoit, and I don't think it's to the same extent or severity, but I mean, it's a similar scenario. When you see this guy in the ring, it's hard not to think about, this guy, calling, I mean, I'm not going to use his language, but insulting and using derogatory language toward, specific groups of people and targeting them. It's very unfortunate.
Well, and here's another thing that I want to bring up while watching this, and you can see it as somebody in my field because I work with a lot of people that have dealt with traumatic brain injuries and stuff like that. He has a lot of instances where and I'm not excusing it, but at the same time, you get that frontal lobe damage, your judgment center is severely compromised. So I know it sounds stupid, but it almost sounded like he was cutting a promo up there in the front.
Yeah, I can see how you would take that away.
I mean, the thing is that his wife was like going, like, he knew that he going to tell us, but I don't think she quite understood what he said until that big one where it videotaped. and he says, "I don't think it went across quite well." And I went, "Didn't come across quite well." And he said, "What exactly did you say? You like using homophobic epithets? I'm not sure if he uses racial epithets. I think he comes very close to it." But he definitely uses homophobic ones because he uses the Q word, which I'm not going to say. He uses like a lot of the F word, which I'm not going to say. And then he starts using a lot of words. And I think at this point, this is the road he starts going on because he actually has, or starts to have a YouTube presence because I think he starts like having like videos where he starts to like slag off Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon and Triple H and all this sort of stuff. It's just like you can tell there's a lot of built up anger and frustration there that comes out and like
And not to interrupt, but I just wanted to also mention that, I mean, obviously the personal stuff, the wrestling, I mean, that happens with all of them. But I mean, it wasn't excuse me, it wasn't just compartmentalized to sexual orientation. I mean, there was one comment that he made in the biography that I saw. It was like, your American life is worth more than every one of these Iraqi lives. That, I mean, when comparing deaths in the Iraq War, and it's just like these comments. These aren't. But like Bobby was saying, I mean, these aren't political comments. These are almost just this is almost just promo trying to rile people up, and I mean, it's just. I mean,
Like it's almost like
it's very disheartening.
it's almost like fantasy. Like as I said, that judgment center in your frontal
Yeah,
lobe.
yeah.
It's like his fantasy world is bleeding into like his old professional wrestling world is bleeding into his actual world. And I mean, you see it with these wrestlers who take chair shots, who get lots of bumps, who like in the head. I mean, and I'm not excusing it. As I said, he might just be a shitty human being. But I didn't ever get that inkling until that very moment. You know what I mean? Like I didn't get the fact that he would have had any issues with. I mean, maybe until this late in his life, all of a sudden he takes this hard right turn. Like, and it's just like, wait a minute, like where did this come from? And that's what I look for in my profession, is like these hard right turns where all of a sudden something's not making sense. Now, if there's documented, and I don't know this, if there's documented proof that he was always like, very I don't want to say like racist, and now, okay, if that's always how he's been and just it was hidden very well, okay, then that's fine. Okay, but I had not heard anything about this until that moment in his life. So it's almost like, what the hell just happened? You know?
Well, I mean, from what his wife was saying, it's like he would listen to a lot of talk radio and stuff like that, and Rush Limbaugh and all that sort of
Almost
stuff.
feels like radicalized by it.
But I think what it is that again I don't want to like start going to armchair psychology because I hate it. But it does seem like he's always looking for a father figure, and he found it in these right wing talking points sort of people, and he started to parrot in their ideas. Because when you hear him later on, and he's speaking, he doesn't seem like he holds those ideas really now. It sounds like he's just saying stuff because he was parroting it. And again, I know people are gonna say, "Oh, you're trying to defend the guy." I'm not defending the things he said.
No.
I'm defending the guy because I think that he was very damaged at that point.
Well, and I think his wife said something that was very correct, is that it was very ignorant of him to say, but with ignorance we can be oh god, what was the word she used?
Re-educated.
Well, not even re-educated, just enlightened,
But
or
yeah.
and
That was the premise of it.
and I mean, granted, should he be forgiven for what he said? If that's everybody's own personal judgment. You know what I mean? If people that affected by his talk choose not to forgive him, that is their God-given right. But
Sorry, I'm going.
but I'm just saying. But at the same time, we should also be very that we're all human. We all make mistakes, and if we've learned anything from the current climate of our world, is that things you say 10 years ago will come back to haunt you, and you need to be very cognizant of what you say in today's day and like today for future.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, go ahead. Continue. Sorry.
yeah. I mean, I was just gonna say I agree with you saying everything you say. I mean, it's important. You need to be aware and conscious of what you're saying. But I also feel like I agree with you that he shouldn't be, he shouldn't be completely dismissed because of it. But I also feel that, I don't think that the man should be as, let's say that, I mean, obviously he's a legend, but I don't think he should be heralded as like this hero or something like WWE kind of lights him as, especially like with the Warrior Award and all this stuff. And it's like, you have this award, but here's all these comments and this derogatory, I mean, for lack of a better word, hate speech about groups of people, and it's just like, oh man. But I agree. People make mistakes, and especially with the state of mind that he could have been in, he might have been going off the rails, something might have happened. But anyway, yeah, it's a troubling time in his life, to say the least.
Yeah, so this is around the time when WWE releases the Self Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior, and I think and people say it's because of this whole
Oh,
controversy. I don't usually go in for conspiracy theory nuttiness, but it is very troubling that the timing was pretty close to it. So it's like, yeah,
well,
they were.
sorry, not to cut you off, but I mean that's even covered in the biography. I mean, his widow says, I didn't watch the DVD. I mean, I have. I'm saying as her. She said she didn't watch the DVD, and she suggested to Jim that he don't watch the DVD, and he was thinking about it, and he eventually did watch the DVD, and she
It,
said that she could not fix whatever was broken to him by that DVD. And knowing the type, at least how he was, I mean, obviously none of us know him personally, but how he was portrayed in the biography, I can absolutely see how he would have that reaction to the way that he was shown, as far as being very loyal to the friends who had been dedicated to him, and especially like with McMahon having, seeing him as a mentor, a father figure type of person to him. And I can really see how this would be just extremely damaging, to a person's not only psyche, but just their self-esteem in general. I mean that must really just depress you, honestly.
But I do think that Vince McMahon holds some degree, because the thing is that it's just very funny that that time it happened, that it was very close to him when he started doing the university circuit, and I started to say these things out.
Yeah, I can understand Vince McMahon wanting to distance himself from the Warrior at that time. I mean, as we said, completely just put out a hit piece on him. I think that's a different degree.
well,
You go ahead, Gio.
and the one thing that I don't remember who said it, but one of the either uh, the people, one of the guys that was talking that were I don't remember what they're, the consultants or something like that.
Go
He
ahead.
even he even said, hey, if we can do this and then we can slap a $30 price point on it and make money off of it and make as much money as a WrestleMania, let's do it.
I think that was Bruce Pritchard, the current executive vice president.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean that just
yeah,
puts way in perspective as to how Vince McMahon works sometimes.
yeah. He wasn't thinking of Warrior's mental state. He wasn't thinking of his
Mm-mm.
relationship of Ultimate Warrior. It reminds me of the fake Diesel and fake Razor Ramon situation. Vince just being completely out of touch and saying, well, you know what? I'm not making any money off of these guys anymore. I'm gonna find a way to monetize it. And sometimes it works, as we've seen with WrestleMania and such, and sometimes it doesn't, as we've seen with the XFL and the self-destruction Ultimate Warrior other ventures.
Yeah, as I said, but so this is when he starts to go into that he had a really bad reaction to it, which I think any reasonable person would do. But then he starts talking about the fact that his daughters were born, and that his wife got to see a different side of him. That he, I don't want to say grow up, but that maybe his perspective on life changed, because he's now he could do his painting, which apparently he really liked doing. He liked doing painting. And like being a father, because he said like he didn't really have a father figure to go to, but he could be a father figure to his two daughters.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing that was a bit considered was that his daughter's last name is Warrior. It's like seriously, it's like okay, not
Yeah.
Elwyn, but it's just like okay, but like but again they'll talk about like the stuff he would do for Christmas and the stuff he would do for them, and it's just like, and we got to just see like him come to the peace that he never had through everything that he'd done in wrestling and whatever. We started seeing that he had it through his children, and I think that was good. Yeah,
Yeah.
so because literally, I think what happened was like for years they'd ask him, "Will you come into the Hall of Fame?" And he said no. And then I think just as I think he got his head sorted out because he'd been with his daughters, he'd gotten out of that right wing. I don't want to say right wing, sorry, but that sort of like hateful mindset that he was in. And now he'd come to like a peaceful place in his life. And then he comes to WrestleMania, and like it's so good because he's like you getting to see like interacting with people. Like he shook hands um with Vince McMahon. He like he met with. I know you guys said that part was staged, but part of me thinks it wasn't. One of the things that like because Hulk Hogan always said that he liked Ultimate Warrior, that he always liked Jim, but like sometimes Jim's personality can be a bit prickly. And I think he said and he said like he shook his hand and stuff like that. I said I understand where you come from, blah blah blah. And he said, look, I've never had bad feelings about you, and that's what he's always said. We've been interviewed about him that I always thought he was a good guy. I just think that sometimes we get too far up our own backside. And trust me, Hulk Hogan's somebody who knows what it's like to disappear up your own crevice when it comes to your character. Sorry.
I was just gonna say that not that I'm gonna put words in Bobby's mouth as well, but at least for my opinion, I think Hellwig was genuine with this wanting to come back, wanting to reconcile with everything. I think it was Hogan that was superficial and kind of staged and bullshit. I just thought it was another Terry, doing what's best for Hulk. I don't think that was a genuine, apology from Terry Bollea.
And I mean, Hulk,
doing what's best for Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, and I think Hulk. I mean, you're probably right, boss man. I mean, Hulk may not have a problem with, but I mean, Terry Hulk Hogan is what I'm going to call him. He always, but he's right. Like AJ's right. It's always Terry's helping Hulk, and him going up to I mean, that was such a staged moment, and I felt like yes for
right there, centered
yeah that was it just felt like the Ultimate Warrior was very genuine in what he was saying. Hulk though seemed very disingenuous in my opinion. Maybe he's just so used to being disingenuous that maybe it just came off that way.
And I would say the same thing for myself. It might just be because that's how I interpret Hulk Hogan usually, and that's usually how Hulk Hogan is. But he came across as ingenuine.
So okay.
But I'm just saying by the things that Hulk Hogan said in shoot interviews before this happened, that he said that he likes the Ultimate Warrior, that he liked Jim as a person. He said that some of his actions annoyed him, which we could all understand. But yeah, but then you can see everything that he was doing at the moment. That he had a moment with Vince McMahon, he had a moment with Triple H. Shane said that he was really nice to him, and then we got to see him going out on stage with his two daughters on his side, and you could feel the fans sorry, I'm starting to tell that a little bit. Sorry, because you could feel the fans show their appreciation for him. And you can tell that, instead of what he was getting at the colleges, which was a lot of hate, he was being appreciated for what he did. It's going, for me, and the fact that people were basically saying, root for him, and he said, got to say, I want to say to my wife that I love you, I want to say to my children, I'm proud of you. Since it says, the thing is, the Ultimate Warrior was who I was, but it's not who I am now. And that was the big thing that sort of got me, is that he was finally at a place that he could relax and just be himself. He could be he was supposed to be all along. And I think for me, when he went on to Raw and he did that last speech, which I think was one day everyone's heart will beat a last beat, and sometimes you'll take your last breath, but it's about what he created while he was alive, and he talks about he lives inside of you and stuff like that. And I thought, it puts chills on my skin now. You're saying that, considering what happened.
Well, I also think that he probably knew something was going on with himself. At that point, I feel like maybe he knew that his life he was having some health issues. I don't know if he was talking to doctors at that point. Maybe they were telling him, look, you've got to take better care of yourself. But sometimes the human body has a way of telling you that something is wrong overall. And I mean, I think it was coincidental as well as him knowing maybe when Vince came to him with this final, his last year of, hey, let's induct you in the Hall of Fame. I think he knew. I think he knew he wasn't going to be around for much longer. And I also think he knew that, and maybe he didn't know it was going to happen so quickly, but I feel like he's like, all right, I feel like it's now or never, and I need closure. And he didn't get that closure. He got, he wanted to get that closure with people, and I feel like he got it. And and this is one of the parts that got to me is because they're talking about they're on spring vacation, like not long after. What was it? 7 days after? It was like 7 days after the Hall of Fame induction, and he said, no, I think I need to go to the hospital. And it's like they left the kids at the hotel, and just and then they go, and then he's gone. And
yeah, she literally said like he was like a big massive Hulk, and he just basically fell, and it's just like, and he didn't even stop himself. And it's just literally like she knew that something was really, really wrong.
so
Yeah, I think it was, and I agree with you, Bobby. I don't think that he had any idea that it was going to be that soon. I don't think you're going to go on vacation. I don't think you're going to try to travel, if you think you're that ill. But I agree with you. I think he knew something was up. Um, and as well as I just think that's the way Warrior speaks. A lot of that stuff. I think a lot of it was a coincidence, but I can also see how he might not have been feeling well. And as they mentioned in the documentary, he has a family history of men dying in their 50s. 3 generations actually have died in their 50s, including him. So it's very unfortunate, but I also feel and agree with Bobby that it's great that he did get that closure. He got that final, recognition from the fans. He got that final, ending, the relationships on a high note. Putting the water under the bridge. That I burying the hatchet. All those idioms. I feel like he really it put him at peace, even more that he was at the end of his life already.
and one of the other things I just want to add is that it is very nice to see that he's like, you see a lot of history repeating itself with family dynamics. And I know this is not really about the Warrior per se, but like one of the things that got me at the end of this documentary was he broke the cycle. He loved his kids. He was there for his kids. Until his dying day, he was there for his kids, and they felt the love. There's never any inkling that there was any problem there. They're just like, no, our dad was just so involved with us and loved us and did all this stuff for us. And it's just like, you love to hear the story of the cycles being broken, of like abandonment and bad parenting and abusive childhoods and relationships. And that's what really got to me at the end of this was he did it.
Yeah, no, he did it. And I mean, not to finalize it on a comedic note, but I mean, yeah, you really got to love somebody to keep the last name Warrior. I mean, I'm sorry, that's just one of the stupidest things.
It is really one of the stupidest things. I agree with you on that one.
But he, obviously, he was very, he was very, very close to his kids, and I don't think it hit me as emotionally as it did you, Bobby, but it is. It's a very touching moment to break that cycle, to have the experience of being abandoned yourself, and then being able to provide,
Well, and I call it rising above it.
That's what I mean. Yeah, yeah. Not as you said, not falling into a cycle, doing it yourself, but going above and beyond, being the greater person.
Yeah, because I think that, as I said, like, you have, like, literally a decade before that induction, him being embarrassed and all this sort of stuff, and him basically being, blackballed from a lot of places, but then, like, his kids basically, I hate to say the word, saved him. Saved him from himself, saved him from all the anger and all the frustration he obviously held about different things, because, like, you can still hear it in his voice that when he's later on that he's frustrated about the way his WWE career ended or his WCW career ended. And I think, because a lot of people, when they finish, they want to finish on their terms. But sometimes that doesn't happen, unfortunately. That's the reason why I'm glad that, it's not just WWE anymore. There's now AEW, ROH, or whatever. Where if you don't feel that your career is finished on your terms, you can go and say, look, I won't go work for 2 or 3 years, help some new kids, come up, but end it on my own terms so I could go and, look myself in the mirror and say, you know what, I ended it, but it should have been ended. And I think that's the thing with him. He didn't get to end it on his terms, it was ended for him. And I think that's something that he did look back and say, you know what, and I think that's what led to a lot of his anger issues. But yeah,
Okay.
it was a very, very sad. I thought towards the end was really sad because, he got the peace that he'd always looked for, and then when he did, literally a week later,
he
he's
didn't
gone.
get to appreciate any of it. Didn't get to reap any of the rewards.
Yeah, and that's what everybody was saying. Shane McMahon, Vince McMahon, a lot of his friends were saying, look, the person he was at the end was at peace and had everything sorted out, and then as soon as he did, it was taken away. It's just really sad. It's just like that made me upset that a guy who'd had all these problems that he had finally found what we all look for to having a good life, and then he doesn't get to enjoy it. Okay, well, thank you everybody for watching us review this, and hopefully, because it'll be That's on the Ring, where also be the Ultimate Warrior. So I don't know what that's going to be, but I hope that you all enjoyed these documentary series. I know I did, and please get tuned for the next one. See you all later.
Let's get ready to